In the meantime, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am seeing some few names from yesterday, which is good. We like return soldiers. In this kind of event, we'd like to see people that are coming back and staying part of the community. I see Chef Naledi has made it to the audience. Yay! Happy to see you. Debato, you were here yesterday as well with your you do the ambulance services.
Morning. Yeah. Basically, I wrote everything that was advised yesterday. So yeah, I'm getting there.
You're getting there. Okay. Oh, my guy, I hope, you know what you must do? You actually need time to sit with some sort of focus group and get people to ideate with you. Yours is a very interesting business to do, and I think it has potential to actually expand quite further. People will, in terms of medical services, and you can't get there, it's a very necessary service that we need. We just need to ideate some more on how to actually get you going in that regard, yeah?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll consider that.
Awesome. You were here yesterday as well, weren't you?
Yes, I was here.
Awesome. You see, I recognize some names from yesterday. But one of my favorite key quotes from what Lebo was saying yesterday is features tell, benefits sell. I mean, for me, that was a big woo-ha because each time we explain this to entrepreneurs when we look at business models, and he's trying to say, guys, you're focusing so much on the construction of this product. But if it is not going to deliver value or any benefits to your customer, then there is no point in making this look so fancy unnecessarily. And one of the ways to explain the difference is if you see like car adverts, they're so good at doing this. They hardly talk about the engine size or the fact that the car has got 4 tires. Those are the sort of things that you ask a salesman when you're actually purchasing the car. But in the ad, especially if you look at a BMW ad, it talks about the pleasure of driving the car. They want us to aspire to be in the driver's seat and experience it. So much so, you go check if you can afford it, or at least go for a test drive at the bare minimum. That is the difference of explaining features versus benefits. That was yesterday. Today, we're going to look at overall digitalization of your business model. So when lockdown started in South Africa, most business owners had to make a decision on whether to hibernate and wait things out. And then some businesses had to shut down while waiting. Some could continue to operate and in all likelihood needed to make some changes in either a value proposition or pivot the entire business model. So we've experienced a whole roller coaster on steroids when it comes to actually trying to think differently and pivoting or adapting our business models. Let's hear from you, maybe one or two of you, how you have managed to stay alive during the lockdown and what have you done that was innovative in terms of turning things around. You may raise your hand and I'll give you an opportunity to unmute. Caleb, I saw that you're from Mpumalanga, so I hope you're going to join. Ne, Caleb, you're going to pitch.
Yes, I'm going to pitch. I'm actually going to pitch. Actually from Lephalale, not Mpumalanga.
Oh, sorry, Lephalale.
Yes. So to answer your question, I had to divert and start new strategies in connection with my business because
What's your business, Caleb?
I'm into media.
Opportunity. Media.
Yes, I'm into media. Media solutionist. What we basically do is we do photography, videography, and sound engineering. And basically, how I got affected is that gigs and stuff were all down, and we had no opportunity to shoot anything or to provide our services to our people. So basically, we started another business that was offering people like this one right here, Zoom services that was offering meetings to businesses that couldn't meet up with the requirements of COVID and stuff. So we provided Zoom meetings to some companies that they could engage in each other, and we provided that through our cameras and stuff. So that's how we evolved from solemnly going out there getting gigs to online services like that.
Awesome. That is a good job on your behalf.
Awesome. Marang, if you permit me, I just want to engage Caleb very quickly and also assist him to add to the value that he's currently offering. Caleb, I'm going to ask you now, do you have your equipment, your camera equipment? Do you own them?
I own half of them. That's the other reason I'm going to enter the competition, so that I can have most of the equipment that I can, that I should have to have a proper quality in terms of this. Yes. Okay. But I do own 2 cameras, sound system, and mics.
Okay.
And
the second question is your business on YouTube? Do you have a YouTube channel?
I have opened a YouTube channel. I have not been active, but we do have a YouTube channel. That is up and running.
What you need to do also is some of the work you've done, your portfolio, you need to start putting them on the YouTube channel. And secondly, you need to add podcasting to your offering. Some of the businesses or some of the clients that you're currently working with, you need to tell them that you are able to also assist them with podcasting and all of that. So you need to look at all the new digital services that you can add on top of what you're currently offering. Because of time, we're going to move to the next delegate. Please take it from there, Marang. You're welcome.
Caleb, if I were you and I knew I was a smart man, I would contact Sam and be like, Sam, about those notes that you gave me earlier. And I say this because you don't want to miss an opportunity to actually engage on that particular type of advice. And Sam is in this space, so he actually understands this very, very well. And he's someone that is a good mentor as well. So I think he'll be able to offer you some advice that can assist you further. But good job on staying alive, my guy. Chef Naledi. This is one of my favorite chefs. Very good food if you really are hungry and you need your event catered for. Chef Naledi, what have you done to stay alive during COVID? I mean, considering that you also do events and your business is engaging with people, how have you managed to stay alive?
Good morning. Thank you, Marang. Thanks to 67 CEOs for this platform. It's been an amazing 2 days. Yes, as Marang has said, I'm a chef, but I do a whole host of things, if I may put it that way. I always say I'm a different kind of chef. Mine is more on the empowerment side of things, although I do run a catering company as part of my offering. But I have built a separate team for that. So I'm more on the empowerment. So I'm also a culinary instructor. So what I do is I conduct cooking classes for kids, for children from as young as 6 years old. This was basically informed by or motivated by my own kids. So at 8 o'clock, at 8 years, they could already pack their own lunch boxes and all. I also offer cooking classes to housekeepers, domestic workers, whichever phrase you use. This was also quite informed by my helper when I was busy juggling business. The last thing that I do in terms of that culinary side is corporate team building. So instead of the physical activities that we always do, obviously teams needed to get in touch with each other during this whole lockdown. So instead what I did, then I decided to move everything online, bought into the Zoom license, and I started conducting cooking classes online for children, for the housekeepers, but my favorite was also corporates, because then they could also connect with each other from all over the world, somewhere or all over the country. But fortunately, with some of the teams, they had people who were locked down in Italy. So that was also a bonus for me, and it brought about a different way of doing business in order for me to at least stay afloat during this hard time. Then as soon as we were open to start delivering food, I started also offering frozen foods, frozen meals for different families. We have packages. So those frozen meals would be delivered and you don't have to cook for the rest of the week. So
wow.
Yeah, that's basically what I did.
Wow. Well done. It's good. I mean, look, it would have taken you probably a lot longer to get to having a gig in Italy. But I think the digitized environment makes this whole world one big global village and has given us access to a much broader audience than we would have otherwise had in this part. But good job on your part for doing these sessions. Sipesehle, you're next. What have you done? What business are you in, and how have you used any digital skills to innovate your business?
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My business is Phoenix Media Production and Holdings. So it's more or less, actually it's the same as Caleb. However, with the session of yesterday, it really connect with the answer that you're actually looking for today, because during lockdown, obviously there were no gigs, as Caleb mentioned. Now we couldn't go out and have shootings and all that. But then now we had to think differently. We have to think out of the box. So what we did was we started, because what we were doing, we were limiting ourselves as an organization. We were not creating, we were just shooting event and all that. So we decided to say we're going to expand now and create portfolios for models, actors, singers. We create digital,
Awesome.
we create digital portfolios, because what happens is that in rural areas, these talent, singers, models, actors, from ranging from young people, old and adult, they don't have access to what we have here in Mpumalanga, and even some part of these Mpumalanga provinces, they don't have access to those auditions that they host this in this industry. So we created digital profiles. Those digital profiles, we then submit them to different auditions chances when an audition appears, and then we submit on behalf of that talent. So that's what
can
we
people book
during lockdown.
Sorry, Sipesihle, can people book the artist through your organization? Have you considered doing that?
No, we haven't considered doing that because of some aspect in terms of being eligible to do that, because we are working toward it so that we are eligible to do that. There's a certificate we're supposed to have from arts department. So we are still working on getting that. So currently we're just able to create profiles and portfolios, and then we submit on behalf of talent to give them exposure, especially those ones from rural areas.
Fantastic. Good job. I hope that we will also see you entering the pitch contest, seeing as you are from Mpumalanga. But from your feedback, I especially like the fact that you acknowledge the fact that you have been holding yourself back. You have limited your own growth. It's such an important thing to acknowledge as an entrepreneur, some of the things that we are doing out unto ourselves and sabotaging our own growth sometimes. And when we acknowledge those kind of things, then we can start working towards fixing them and repairing them. I saw Puseleta's again with us today. She's somebody that can assist those of you that are actually struggling with these kind of battles, and you need to just retire from actually the burdens that are holding you back. So if you can find her in the participants list and you need some assistance in that regard, contact Puseleta. It does come with a good massage as well, I do believe. I think I'm going to go to the next person. Sipesihle, thank you so much for your contribution. Mangwedi, what have you been doing, my dear?
I'm not sure if everyone can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you, dear?
I'm good. Well, I actually started my business during the lockdown, and it wasn't even by way of trying to make money initially. I had just developed this cream that I used on my body and on my skin and in my hair, and everything was flourishing. And I just figured everybody needs a little bit of this magic in their homes. So that's when I launched Hey Bunny. So basically I call it clean beauty, because it's organic, it's got no chemicals, no additives, and it's just basically Mother Nature's goodness on embracing you and loving you up. So I started my business during the lockdown, and the response has been incredible so far.
Yeah, most of us have suffered from a lot of dry skin from being indoors and not being able to, go out during the lockdown period. So I imagine there is a lot of uptake on that. I'm actually quite curious in that. I need that sort of relief myself. So what is in your cream exactly? You say it's completely organic?
It's completely organic. It's made mostly out of shea butter and other nourishing ingredients, which are listed on the bottle itself. And I just realized also that the pie is so big for everyone, because when I initially got into the business, I was very scared, thinking there's so many of us that make these products, so many of us that are venturing into clean beauty. But I realized that we can all whip shea butter, but mine is completely unique to how I make it. And I've tested other products, and I've been very happy with the results of, how light my shea butter is, the results that it gives you. I've given out samples to family and friends, and they've come back with raving reviews. So when I launched the product itself, the response was incredible. But now I'm just waiting for, how do I say, repeat business? Because I figure the first batch is always okay, let's give her a chance batch, Let's see if this thing does what she says it does. And the real business will start once I get referrals and repeat business from the people that have either sampled or purchased the jar. And for me,
I hope you're applying a lot of what you learned from Lebo yesterday. Were you in the session yesterday?
No, definitely. Especially that whole features tell, benefits sell. That is going to be my biggest driving factor. Okay. Just to keep it people-based as well. Yeah. And I think for me to stay consistent during the lockdown, I find that my delivery service is always on point. Mm-hmm. And that's not even by my grace. It's just the companies that I work with are just really efficient. So when I promise somebody a delivery between 3 and 5 days, they'll usually get it after 2 days. And so people are like, oh, it's already here. And I find that, that sort of interaction and excitement for a client to get their product sooner than what they had anticipated, that also is helping me to solidify and to solidify a foundation with my clients.
Okay, fantastic. I hope you are using the customer feedback and that engagement from your customers as content for your digital marketing. That would be great. People love it to see that you're not just boasting about yourself, but actually other people can just give you a high five and say, you know what, this product is in fact fantastic. The service is in fact, I know it myself, because word of mouth still works. And a recommendation from somebody is still more powerful than anything else. Good job for seeing this as an opportunity at a time when people were seeing a lot of despair during lockdown. Good job for you seeing an opportunity to actually just go out in there. You've just jumped into the scariest river, but it's okay. Yes. There's lots of us here. We'll help you swim, okay?
Thank you.
Sharp. Sorry, guys, we're just running a bit late. We are waiting on Vusi to join us. So I'm just going to take a few more people and get more input from you as to what is it that you have done. I'm particularly interested in hearing how you've used your digital skills or technology, or even just other innovative ways to actually stay alive in such a hard time, and pivot your business or engage in skills that you've never, ever explored before. So let's hear Onika or Onika. How do I pronounce it? I always get laughed at for pronouncing people's names, and I don't like to get it wrong. With a name like
Onika.
Onika, okay. With a name like mine, I've been called Marang all my life and not Marang. So I try very hard not to mess up with other people's names. Thank you, ma'am. What have you been up to?
Oh, Marang. And good morning, everyone. And thanks to 67 CEOs for this opportunity. And yeah, Marang, as a makeup artist and a nail technician, when the lockdown hit us, there were no bookings, no appointment. And yes, as a fashion student, I had to switch from sewing clothes to sewing masks because we are on lockdown. And yes, we needed masks, So that's
and
how
what
I
have you
survived.
done from with the makeup and the nail part of the business?
I was just advertising on Facebook and Instagram. So then I switched. I had to switch and focus more on making masks. I had to switch from the beauty industry to the fashion one, from sewing masks. Like every day I had to produce and I had bulk orders. So that's how I survived my lockdown. And people needed masks.
Please don't give up on the makeup and the nail side of things. I mean, if you have the opportunity to even teach people how to do these things, there's people like me who are handicapped at putting on their own makeup. So we live off like video how to do these things ourselves, or even just running a mobile service where it's so personalized that a person doesn't have to, run the risk of being exposed to COVID in a salon if those are the kind of anxieties that they have. But then being able to go to someone and, or doing just one-on-one sessions so that you can contain the spread of COVID, but actually still keep practicing the things that you love. So don't give up on that just because this has happened, yeah?
No, the reason I gave up on that is because I got discouraged after a client robbed me of my makeup kit. I was doing, house calls, so then I got robbed.
Don't let such things discourage you. I've just gone through being screwed over by a business partner during COVID. We live, we learn, we must get over, we must just figure out how do we protect ourselves from this happening ever again? And then we move on. Don't get discouraged by such things.
Okay, madam.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Most of you know Vusi as the CEO of My Growth Fund and as a public speaker. He's a venture capitalist. I don't know if you know that he's also a best-selling author. My Growth Fund is a venture capital firm that facilitates access to development finance, access to market, and invests in developing business owners. For that, they look into your business model. So I'm going to hand over to you, Vusi. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. And somebody's saying, Vusi the dragon.
Sam, thank you so much for the invitation. And to everybody that's joining us, thank you for this session. So I think first just to kind of take a step back in terms of what it is that's going to be in our conversation today. And what I am hoping we can do is to have a discussion rather than a presentation. So I'll present with you what I think are a series of thoughts for you to consider. And then I'm very happy for us to get into a Q&A. My own experience with these things is that there tends to be a lot more value when we are exchanging ideas, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is ask each of you in the comment section, go and register for me what is the foremost question in your mind right now about your business. So go into the chat section right now and write down for yourself what is the most important question that you're asking yourself about your business right now. Let's take a solid 30 seconds so that everybody has some time to do that. By the way, the English doesn't have to be very academic. So you don't have to feel pressure to write Vusi Temugwayo English. Just write down what your foremost questions are. And the rest will take care of itself. The rest will take care of itself. So let's do that for the next 30 seconds. And whilst you do that for the next 30 seconds, I'm going to go through some of the questions and see that we're aligned in terms of what it is I wanted to share. Where will my business be in 5 years from now? Jesus, Albert. That's a tough question. And by the way, I've got to tell you that I think it's a question that most business people actually shouldn't be asking. You shouldn't be asking a question like that, but I'll share with you my thoughts about why in a minute. I'm running a water purification company, so I would like to know if I should put my business let's see, put my business on an online selling since I deliver my bottles to the customers? That's an interesting question. Evidence. We'll see if we have some time to get into that. Evidence. That's a hell of a name. You need a lot of evidence for me to answer that question. That was a joke, evidence. On average, how long should my business start trading from the moment of what I am going to be selling to the moment I start selling to my first customer? I imagine you say from the moment I know what I'm going to be selling. Okay, got it. How will my product resonate with the market? Is there any more room for athletic wear? How to grow and attract customers? Fairly generic question, Nomsa, but I'll try and help you with that. How do I continue to remain relevant in an ever-changing industry? That is the question of our time, isn't it? It's all of our markets, all of our industries that we're all operating in and working in today are shifting and changing. And the question for us as entrepreneurs and business builders is, how do we remain relevant? So I'm going to get started, guys. And the way I'd like to do this is, if you have a pen and paper, please have it in front of you, because what I'm going to do is to share with you a lot of the how. Let me just I've been a professional speaker for 16 years. I've had the privilege of working in 49 countries. I've probably addressed over 3-4 million people over that time. In an average year, I will travel between 19 and 22 countries at a point in time. So that's 2 to 3 countries in a month. That's in an average year. I say this to make this point. When it comes to these kinds of conversations, there are very few things I have not heard or I have not seen. Very few. So for me, one of the things I've realized is that knowledge is ubiquitously available. You can find knowledge and information about anything you want to do at any time, actually. It's all around us. But knowledge alone doesn't create an impetus for change. So to say it differently, knowing what to do and doing what you know to do are different things. And I've seen over the past 16 years as a professional speaker, 10 years in capital markets, 8 years as a venture capitalist, one of the things I've realized is that people know what to do. It's not that you don't know, guys. There's something underlying us that often is the impediment between what we know and what we do. I say this to make this point. I am a how person. I'm not a what person. There are a lot of what people out there. They'll tell you what to do. I'm not as interested in what to do. I'm more interested in how to do it. Because I think once you understand the mechanistic way of doing things, the process of doing things, then doing the thing is a lot easier, right? It's something that's a lot more tenable, a lot more manageable, and frankly, a lot easier for you to do. So for me, that's what's important. That how is very, very important. And I'm going to ask that you, in your mind, make a mental note of that, right? So how are you going to do what you are asking of yourself to actually do? How? That how is like everything. If you can't get the how right, nothing else matters. Mechanistic process about how to do. Later we talk about the what, but the how to do is very, very important. So make a note for that, about that in your own mind. Right. So the first thing, I think the first place to start is maybe just to take a step back and understand the context in which we find ourselves and where we are operating and what's happening around us. So my study, my training, I trained as a finance person, so I like the world of Excel spreadsheets and balance sheets. I understand those well. My background is in sales, so you train in finance, but you're studying complex financial products. And my fascination is with economics. That should kind of give you a sense of how my brain works, right? So I like arithmetic. I like the rudimentary study of numbers and the flow of information. I like logical process flows. And I like to look at the big picture so I can understand how my actions are going to influence that big picture. So let's start first with the big picture. Here's the big picture. If you're operating in South Africa, which I imagine most of us in this conversation are, if you're operating in South Africa today, here are the facts. There are 55 million South Africans. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which is the deepest capital markets in the continent, with the most complex set of products. What that means is it's got the widest product variation of any stock exchange in the continent. That will change over the next 5 years if the people in Morocco continue their trajectory for growth as they are. But the Johannesburg Stock Exchange continues to occupy position number 1 in terms of stock exchanges and capital markets in the continent. And the reason that's important is because the interface between the public flow of funds and private enterprise, these things we call businesses, is the stock exchange, right? So generally, where pension funds will buy shares in a business or will participate in a debt instrument of a particular business, is they'll go to the stock exchange to do that. Generally, not always. But if you look at the JSE, many years ago, the JSE had and they still do, actually. They have an exchange called Altex. And many years ago, I was a majority shareholder in an Altex listed business. But the JSE I was a majority shareholder of a structure that was a majority shareholder in an Altex listed business. So I understand very well how Altex listings work. They are, as they say, under-regulated, but over-supervised. And the impetus for the Alt-X, guys, was to prepare small businesses and growth businesses for the main board. That was the whole impetus. It was like a graduation platform. You listed your business on Alt-X to ready yourself for the main board. If you go and look today, and you compare the number of businesses listed on the Alt-X today versus 5 years, you'll see a marked decline in the number of businesses there. But not only that, if you look at the main board, you'll see a marked decline in the number of businesses that are listed in the main board over the past decade. I'm saying this to make this very simple point, that there are fewer businesses dominating the economy of our country. That's a terrible thing, by the way. Because one of the things you learn about how high growth economies are built that promise high operating leverage for new entrants is you need mass participation and a high growth of new upstarts. The reason it's the case that you've seen a marked decline in Altex listed businesses is not only because the cost of listing is expensive. And I promise you guys, I need you to understand the high level. I know some of you are listening going, what are we talking about? Just trust me, this is going to make sense. It's not only because the cost of listing is expensive, but it's also because the environment we are operating in is not conducive for building high growth businesses. That's a big part of why we are where we are. And you can't deal with the one without dealing with the other, right? So there's a lot of work for us to do there if we want to be deliberate about how we exercise ourselves as agents of change using this thing called a business. I want you to, on your notepad, ask yourself this question and just write it down. You don't have to answer it to the rest of us in this conversation. But I just want you to write this question down. And I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to give some thought to this question. And here's the question. Why are you in business? Just write that question down. Why am I in business? I think a lot of us are in business, if I can be honest in this conversation, because of the romantic concept of business. Business is very romantic, you know. One of the things I often hear is when people say, I want to work for myself. I don't know how to tell you this, but the minute you start a business, you work for many people. Yourself is the last person you work for. First, you work for your customers. I beg your pardon. I was saying first you work for your customers, then you work for your suppliers, then you work for your staff, then you work for your shareholders, and then eventually for you. So the idea that you're in business and therefore you work for yourself, if that's how you're thinking, you need a fundamental rethink. That's you work for many people. Yourself is the last person in the rung of the group of people that you work for. So let's just take a step back and talk about a bit about what I've done. I told you a little bit about this challenge we have of our capital market system not being welcoming to small, medium, and high growth businesses. This is an important conversation to have because I was on a call with a company that facilitates listings for stock exchanges in Europe, particularly in the United Kingdom. And one of the things that came out of that conversation actually was how much appetite there is in those markets for small businesses to list. It's unbelievable. I could not believe how much appetite there is for you and me to list our businesses in those markets. Huge appetite. But if there's all this appetite and it's for African businesses to list there, then why aren't African businesses taking that opportunity up? What's missing? What's the missing formula? What's the trick that we're missing to enable us to actually take advantage of that, right? And that's a big question for us to answer, and I hope to answer it over the course of our conversation. And then just a final note on this conversation about capital markets. If you are an entrepreneur, and I know most of us in this conversation are, we often talk about access to funding. When I say capital markets, it's a corporate finance term for access to funding. Capital markets are markets where you go to access capital. That's all they are, right? It's a very, smooth way that corporate financiers, you say, this is the ability for the average person to access capital in the market. We know that's an important measure because absent of it, it's very difficult for business people to build businesses. I want to remind you in this conversation that for the first 13 years of its history, Amazon ran operating losses. Now, in South Africa, the Companies Act says that if a company runs losses for 3 years or more, then the directors of that company, then the auditors of that company have to, by law, they have to issue a disclaimer in your audited financial statements. They have to, right? So a Jeff Bezos can never happen in South Africa. It's impossible because he wouldn't be allowed to run his business the way he runs Amazon. For the first 7 years of its existence, Facebook didn't even have a revenue model. 7 years it existed, it didn't make a cent. Guys, I run a venture capital firm. Just this year, we won the best impact investment firm for Africa at the Worldwide Finance Awards. I can tell you for free, I have never seen an African business running for 7 years without a revenue model. Never seen it. So we like to pretend like we do venture funding, but we don't. We use venture funding fundamentals to actually do business, access to business finance. That's what we do. And it's a hugely critical statement. And there are people who work in the industry with me who'd be very upset to hear me say that. But it's a statement of fact. It's just a statement of fact. So what I want to do is to bed us on a couple of thoughts, and I'd prepared this for you guys. It'll help you understand kind of where my thinking is coming from. Right. So let's take a step back here. So this is the first thing I want to show you. Have a look at this. Remember I told you guys I'm an economics finance guy? All right, so this is my economics finance brain working. I have to tell you, one of the great privileges of running a firm like ours is that I am now accountable to people other than myself. So for instance, for all the investments that we make, I have an investment committee, and my investment committee has like some really, really sharp people. And in the firm, I have a board, and my board has some really, really sharp people. So I'd like to sit here and pretend like, I am this amazing superstar who does all of this by himself. It's just not true, guys. It's not true. I have people around me whose job it is to make sure that I succeed. But I also have to tell you that it's designed that way deliberately. I designed it that way. When I realized the rate at which our business was growing and where we were going, I realized I needed to put people around me who could protect me from myself, but also who could help me unlock opportunities. And my board and I have very frank conversations, a lot of them about the firm, about the strategy, about my management team, about me, deep conversations about me. And so one of the questions for you to ask yourself, to all of the 80 participants in this conversation, is, do you have a board, right? And I'm not talking about a fiduciary board, even if it's an advisory board, but do you have a board? People that you go to who give you, unsolicited free advice, but you know that it's advice that's dependable, that you can act on. Now, back to this graph that I'm showing you. This graph is it demonstrates or looks at the growth of the world's economy since the death of Jesus. It's economics work done by a fellow called Angus Maddison, who in my opinion is probably one of the foremost thinkers and economists of our time. Angus Maddison looked at and framed the world's economy since the death of Jesus. He worked with, I think it was 48 other professors in total. And what they proved was that the growth of the world's economy, a measure that we use in economics called GDP, has been exponential. You see it in the dark blue line from the 1st to the 20th century, and you see those notated on I think it's the y-axis, on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, you see the 1st to the 20th century. The dark blue line shows you economic output. And what you notice is that there is a huge rise in global economic output, GDP, in the 20th century. The question could be why. The answer is very simple. The world is connected today. Human beings are connected to one another. We're connected, we're chatting, we're talking. Today, you can buy a product in one part of the world, ship it to another part of the world using a shipment company in a different part of the world and sell it to a consumer in an even different part of the world, right? So the world's economy has grown fundamentally. That's this here, this dark blue line. The light blue line demonstrates life expectancy. And what do you notice? That's also increasing. So the point about that is simply to recognize that human beings today are living longer than they've lived ever. Certainly over the past 2,000 years of us keeping a record of global life expectancy, right? In simple English, there's never been a better time to be a human being on this little rock of ours called Earth than today. But I have a question for all of us in this conversation, and my question is this. If my hypothesis is true, and I'm arguing here that it is, then explain to me why perhaps global income inequality is higher today than it's been in a very long time. The reason for that is because whilst there is a growth in wealth, the instruments of distributing that wealth are not efficient. So wealth redistribution is an important part of how you sustain a society, right? And if we don't get the wealth distribution mechanisms right, you can't sustain the underlying society. This tags back to my very first argument that I was making earlier when I spoke about the role of the JSE, the role of capital markets. Because the Public Investment Corporation, the PIC, the Eskom Pension Fund, the Transnet Pension Fund, all of the large pension funds in South Africa have trillions of rands that they invest in businesses. The majority of that money goes into the traditional JSE, which are large listed businesses. So there's something here for me that doesn't make sense. Pension funds are taking the funds of pensioners who work in actual companies that are in the real economy doing real work every day. But they're buying shares on a financial economy on the secondary market, that is the stock exchange. So the money of pensioners then, who are earning that money in the real economy, doesn't go back towards financing real economic growth. I wonder if you guys understand the point I'm making. The money that yours and my parents are making, or saved up in their pensions, yours and my parents worked in a real company, in a real factory. They earned a real wage. But the money that they earn, that's sitting in their pension fund, which is money that's intended to go to reindustrialization of the economy, actually buys shares of a listed company, and it doesn't reindustrialize the economy, doesn't build new economic capacity, doesn't finance new businesses. And then we wonder why entrepreneurs are saying that there's no money for funding. And the JSE is seeing a net loss in the number of new listings. It's just because the capital flows are going to the wrong place. And time allowing, a bit later, we can discuss some of the changes that we're expecting in terms of Regulation 28. I want to pause on this for a while. This is a very, very busy graph. This was actually published on the front page of it wasn't the Wall Street Journal, of the Washington Post, literally just immediately after Jeff Bezos bought it. It was an article about access to, call it, electricity in the African continent. And I just want to pause here for a minute, guys. The dark blue represents the percentage of the population in each country that does not have access to electricity. And just so we're clear, and I qualify it, that does not have access to consistent electricity supply. Dark blue. So if you look, something should jump out at you, which is look at North Africa. Look at Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt. You notice the North Africans have their act together. This is why when people talk about Africa, I often ask them, which Africa are you talking about? Because there are three different Africas. There's North Africa, which is in whose culture and in whose construct is actually closer to the Middle East than it is to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. There's Central Africa, which tends to be dominated by huge mineral industrial complexes, massive oil deposits, but also wars. And then there's the SADC region, which is in the lower African portion. That tends to be dominated by the South African hegemon, deepest capital market system, most advanced infrastructure, most advanced banking system in the continent, yada, yada, fish paste. So when you talk about Africa, the question you must ask yourself is, which of these three are we actually talking about? Now, I want you to ask yourself the question, look at these dark blues, right? So Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, but 55% of the population of Nigeria doesn't have access to consistent electricity supply. What do you think would happen if that number was half? What would be the size of the Nigerian economy? So in my mind today, if you are an African business and you don't have a Nigerian strategy, you don't have an African strategy. You can't be in Africa and not be in Nigeria. You just can't. Look at East Africa. Look at Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia, right? Just those economies alone. By the way, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda, and Tanzania are often called the Eastern Corridor. They're busy building a transfrontier railway that'll run through those economies. But if you looked at just those economies alone, it's over 50% for all of those economies. In fact, it's over 70%, right? With Ethiopia, it's 76% being the best one. So what do you think happens if you reduce that number and all of a sudden Ethiopia is at 30% and all the other ones are at 40%? What are the size of those economies then? And the reason access to electricity is an important measure of the size of the economy very quickly, just very simply, is because access to electricity talks about you can't run a factory without access to electricity. You can't run a bakery without access to electricity. You can't run an audit firm without access to electricity. So access to electricity actually should tell you that it's a fundamental input into the growth of an economy. So that's the first thing I want you to make a note about, is that the upside opportunity of Africa is huge. Now, I want to just take a step back, comrades, and remind you that I said to you, I will share the how, but before I share the how, it's really important that you understand the macros. The macros are important, guys. If you're watching this and going, what are we talking about? I promise you now, even your business that sells hand sanitizers, this stuff affects you because the big picture is something that affects all of us. You know, big picture is one of those things that doesn't matter until it matters, right? It's like regulation. You think it doesn't affect you, but actually it does. It really just does. So what I've done is I've taken 4 economies in the continent. I've given you what their GDP per capita is. Now, for those of you who didn't study economics, GDP per capita takes the GDP, which is the sum total of economic activity in an economy, and it divides it by the population. So it basically says, if your GDP is X divided by the population, then your GDP per person in the country is X. And the idea is that if your GDP per capita grows, then by definition, every person in the country is getting progressively wealthier. And so one of the things you might want to do is to go and look at South Africa's GDP per capita over the past 10 years. And you'll notice that South Africa's GDP per capita over the past 10 years has remained flat. And the minute you actually adjusted for inflation, it's declined. So over the past 10 years, you have become progressively poorer as an average South African, is the point. I've taken 4 economies in Africa. I compare them with 4 economies in Europe. And I show you the GDP per capita, okay? And you'll notice that the GDP per capita are similar, but the population numbers are different. So the first economy I want to show you is Egypt. 96 million people in Egypt, right? 3,500 is the GDP per capita in dollars. But only 32% of the population of Egypt is in the middle class, with 99% access to electricity. Now look at that GDP per capita number. If you went to Europe, that number would mirror more Armenia. For those of you who don't know, Armenia is the home country of the Kardashians, right? 2.9 million people living in Armenia, but the GDP per capita is higher than the GDP per capita of Egypt. So that gives you a sense. What do you think would happen if Egypt had a bigger middle class? And there's 32 million people in the middle class. Egypt all of a sudden had 40 or 55 million people in the middle class. What happens to the GDP per capita? Massive rise. So the upside for Egypt is huge, massive upside, okay? Let's take another economy. Let's come home. South Africa, 55 million people. 19.8% is the size of our middle class. These numbers are according to Stats SA. 90% of us have access to electricity. Thereabout. It's about 80-something percent, actually. And GDP per capita is at 5,273, right? Now, if you fast forward that and compare it to a Serbia, which has 7 million people, same GDP per capita. So what do you think happens if South Africa takes its middle class from 20% to 30%? What happens to that GDP per capita? All of you here building businesses are building businesses to sell products or services into an economy where people demand and buy them. Who demands and buys products and services? People living in an economy that's growing, that are earning real incomes and real wages that they can spend on those products and services. So the growth of GDP is actually a fundamental measure for you and I both as business people. Then look at Morocco, right? 25 million people, 27% middle class. 99% access to electricity, but look at that GDP per capita, 2,800. Who could you compare that with in Europe? You probably compare it with a country like Ukraine, similar type of number, right? I'm going to do one last one. Ethiopia, 90 million people, one of my favorite countries in the world. Look at how low the Ethiopian GDP per capita is, guys. It's less than $1,000. Size of the middle class is at 88.2%. And what's that mean? It means you could compare it to a country like Nepal, right? So the point I'm making here is that there is massive economic upside for you and I as entrepreneurs and business builders building businesses every day. Massive, huge economic upside. So, Bazalwane, what must you do? Right? So I've made the macro point. Having made the macro point, I've shown you the stats. Having shown you the stats, I ask a simple question. If you're building a business today, what are the series of things that you need to do to make sure that you are relevant in the market today, that you are competitive? So I think let's just take a step back. So one of the things I think, guys, that's changed, and you can't get away from the fact that it's changed, is consumer behavior in the markets that we're operating in has changed, fundamentally changed, right? And I think what a lot of us are doing now is we're spending our time trying to retrofit reality into our plans rather than fit our plans into reality. I'm going to say it again. You're spending your time trying to retrofit reality into your plans rather than fit your plans into reality, right? And there's huge risks when you do that. One of them is that if you surf against the winds of change, you will lose. That's the way it works. The winds of change break the surf in a particular direction. What you rather want to do is to pick up the winds of surf and surf in that direction. So you have to understand that the environment in which you are operating in is changing, has changed, and will continue to change for a very, very long period of time. So the point is that the market that we're operating in is fundamentally shifted and changed. And that's a great thing, because it means that consumers who are acting in a particular way based on the world that was are now going to change the way that they are acting, right? Consumers are looking for new opportunities, new platforms, new service providers. The change is good. What remains for you, though, is how are you going to frame the value proposition of your business so that you can capitalize on that change and so that you can really make good on what that change means for you and your business. Now, I want to share something with you, which I think will help you understand this concept a bit better. Have a look at this. Right. So you got to ask yourself the question, how are you going to build a business that is consumer-centric, customer-centric, however you want to think about it. But at the end of the day, you have to build a business that centers around the underlying user of your product, right? How do you do that? Well, there are 4 things you have to do, and make a note of these if you can. You've got to do these 4 things. The first thing is you've got to make sure that the product that you're offering your market is relevant. For it to be relevant, it must be personalized and meaningful. Please underline the word personalized and meaningful, right? I just want to pause here for a minute, Bazalon. The word personalized means you must understand the person that is the customer. And if you're in a B2B business, the word personalized means you must understand the person that is the buyer of your product within the company that you're selling your product into. Personalized. Now, I wonder how many of you here have done an ethnographic, right? Or what we call an anthropological study of your customers. How many of you here? How many of you here have done any research about the anthropology of your customers? So if you don't understand the underlying drivers of your customers, why they are the way they are, why they think the way they think, what their aspirations are, where you hope to frame a value proposition for those customers, you can't. It's impossible. So take some time and understand the underlying person that is the customer. And once you've done that, you then have to frame the product that you're selling or the service that you're selling in a manner that for them is meaningful. Notice no one here said anything about money. It's meaningful. How do you know something is meaningful? It's meaningful when it has a material impact in the life of your customer, a material impact. Second, make sure what you offer your customer is convenient. To do that, you got to offer them 3 things: choice, consistency, timeliness. Choice. Make sure that they have enough choice. Timeliness. Give it to them as and when they need it. But most importantly, consistency. Guys, when it comes to being centered around your customer, being inconsistently good is worse than being consistently bad. I'll say that again. Being inconsistently good is worse than being consistently bad. And the reason that is because when you are consistently bad, the customers know to expect that from you. It's a bit like the reason why nobody complains about the service at a home affairs. Right? You didn't go to home affairs expecting great service. But if you go to a place where you get great service, and then the next day it's bad service, and then it's great service, then it's bad service, then it's great service, then it's bad service, what happens is you start adjudicating how bad the service is based on how great their service has been before. Right? So what you really want to do for your customers is make sure that you're consistently showing up. Consistency is the ultimate test. Third, be reliable. Now, imagine that all of you here in your own businesses make some sort of promise to customers. I often see them when I'm going through the underlying investment theses, stuff like, we deliver on time, or 24-hour turnaround, or best customer service, or best value money can buy. If you make that kind of commitment to your customer, you better make sure that you deliver that commitment. So the brand promise of your business is fundamental, absolutely fundamental. ShopRite says lowest prices every day. So many years ago, when I was writing my first book, the Magna Carta of Exponentiality, I asked Whitey Besson, I said, are you really the lowest prices every day? He said, yes, lowest prices KVIs. What does that mean? It means that of the known value items that Mr. and Mrs. Housewives know the price of, sugar, mealy-meal, baked beans, etc., sugar, mealy-meal, baked beans, bread, milk. ShopRite wants to be the best priced every day, but ShopRite keeps over 17,000 SKUs. So they say lowest prices every day. What they mean is lowest prices on KVIs every day, but out of a SKU of 17,000, only 40 of them do they want to win the price war. Does that make sense? So the point I'm making here, guys, is make sure that if you have a brand promise to your customers, you keep it. And finally, you have to be responsive. Be responsive, be responsive, be responsive, be responsive. What does this mean, this be responsive? It means you have to listen with the intent to understand so that you can act. Do not listen with the intent to respond. Too many of you are listening to your customers with the intent to respond. You're listening, you're asking for customer feedback so that you can respond, right? And as you're responding, you want to protect yourself and defend yourself. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is to listen with the intent to understand, right? To listen with the intent to understand. Because once you listen with the intent to understand, the conversation with the customer fundamentally changes. Once you listen with the intent to understand, the conversation with the customer fundamentally changes, right? So the point I've made here is quite simply, question yourself about why you do what you do, and question yourself about what it is ultimately that you're trying to achieve when you're doing the things that you're doing, right? Why are you listening to your customers? What is the actual thing that you're trying to achieve here? Okay. I wonder if you can see my current screen. You can. There you go. Let me share it with you. So how have markets, I told you earlier that customers have changed. In the olden days, we used to think about and talk about our customers in the demographic sense. Male, female, youth, pensioner, black, white, educated, not, wealthy, poor, employed, unemployed. There was like this very grayscale way we could think about our customers. We could put them in a little spreadsheet of things, plug their numbers and go, my ideal customer is a black female between the ages of 18 and 35 who is in her second job, earns 40,000 Rand a month and drives a Polo GTI. I don't think a black female between that age would drive a Polo. That was a joke. But the point again that I'm making here quite simply is we used to have this very demographic way of looking at our customers. The way you've got to start thinking about your customers now, guys, you've got to start thinking about your customers as psychographic. The reason this is because all of your customers are on the internet every day consuming new information from new people. They're looking for new insights, and they're using those new insights to act in new ways. So for most of you here, your customers actually are comparing you to somebody in a different part of the world, the part of the world that they've never been to themselves. And so when you're talking about how do I pivot my business towards a digital era post-COVID, one of the things you've got to realize is that your competitors are not just the people in your country, in your location. When I was growing up in business, I could tell you who my competitor was based on their location. They had to be in a certain place, doing a certain job for a certain type of customer and charging a certain price. That was my customer. That was my competitor. Now, that's not the case anymore. My competitor can be anybody from anywhere. I'm competing right now with people I've never met, and they're competing with me because we've flattened the world using this very interesting construct called psychographics. Then the final thing I want to share with you, and after this, I want to see if we can take some questions, because for me, it's the exchange that's really important. Final thing I want you to realize is that even the way your customers understand value is changing. What does that mean? First, what is value? Value is the series of things we use to assimilate what matters and what's important. Value. The first way value is changing in the world today is this idea of identity. What does that mean? A clicks must fall can only happen in an environment where people feel that their identity is either being impugned or their image is being denigrated. I don't think that when that campaign by Clicks was on Twitter, or was it Facebook? I don't think that it was the intention of the company to be malicious. But that notwithstanding, their campaign didn't land well. And the reason is because what they missed to do was to read the cues of change around identity. One of the things we're learning about identity is that all previously marginalized groups are now seeking to stand out. So what are the previously marginalized groups? It's people of color, Black people, predominantly, but not exclusively, people of color, females, the disabled, and then people in the LGBTQI plus community. Those previously marginalized groups are all saying to the world, we want to be seen for who we are, not for who you want us to be, right? So identity is changing. Second, the way your customers think about wealth is changing. Pre-COVID, wealth was how much money do I have in the bank? Now, wealth is how much time, how many relationships, how many connections, right? That's what's proving more important to people now. Third, legacy. The way your customers are fundamentally thinking about what it's all for is also changed. I think pre-COVID, legacy, if you were a B2B business, was about growth in balance sheet, growth in revenues. If you were a B2C business, it was definitely about growth in market share. Now, I think it's shifted. I think it's more about meaningful impact, making a difference in community, and having high impact for the customers you work with every day. Fourth, this archetype of masculinity, be careful for this, especially those of you who use social media to market your business. Be very, very careful of it. This is people to walk into. So we come from a world of gender binaries, right? Male, female. And one of the things that's happened is there's now been a blend of gender, right? And that blending in the middle is a massive crevice for you to walk into if you're not careful. This archetype of masculinity. That what we have tended to do was to have very masculine conversations with our customers, very domineering conversations with our customers. And we use very masculine domineering words like best, highest, most. But we're learning too that actually more tempered language is an even better way to start communicating with your customers, right? A more tempered, a more human language is a better way. And then finally, it's this idea of free. Now, I don't know how many of you in this conversation offer anything for free to your customers. If you don't, you're definitely missing a trick. Free is a fundamental part of how you build, man, especially how you build for the future. Like, it's a huge part of how you build. And the reason you want to offer for free is because you want people to get used to a taste of what you're offering. So, for instance, if your business is in catering and you supply healthy meals to the busy executive, and you want to compete with You Cook and Chef something, the other one, forget their names now, and Nyapi Chef and the rest of them, how do you propose to do that in the world we're in today? I'm going to suggest to you that one of the things you want to do is to identify a target customer and to offer them a product for free. So you're offering, highly nutritious, high-value, low-cost meals to the busy executive who doesn't have time to cook. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for Sam Apata, because I know Sam is that kind of person. I'm going to offer him a week's consignment of goods for free. Hi, Sam, here's food for a week, 1 meal every day. If you like it, you can start buying from me. That is a more effective way to get Sam to buy from you than to take the same amount of money and run a Facebook campaign and hope that Sam is going to look at an image of your food, create a well-taken picture by a fairly decent photographer, and buy from you. Because a well-taken picture from a fairly decent photographer with a decent landing page is just not enough anymore. You've got to move now towards experiential ways of selling to your customers. And so I'm suggesting to you that one of the things you want to do is to start thinking about how can you offer what you're offering to your customers for free. But also give yourself time to date your customers. I think a lot of us here don't spend time going on dates with our customers. How many of you here are actively dating your customer? The process of dating is a great process, very romantic, right? Seth Godin talks about this more eloquently than I can. So have a quick look at this video.
What a chance of a lifetime. What an opportunity to reinvent, to make a difference. So how do you do that? First idea is this. There are 2 ways to get married, right? The first way to get married is to go on Tinder and swipe right over and over and over again, proposing marriage to every single person you swipe. This is a stupid way to get married. The other way to get married is to go on a date. If it goes well, go on another date with that person. Then on the 3rd date, you meet their parents, they meet your parents, you get engaged, right? You wait till the 7th date before you tell them you're out on parole. This method of dating, it worked for me. Maybe it worked for you. It's a smart way to get married. So why aren't you dating your prospects? Permission marketing is this idea of connecting to people who want to be connected to, marketing to people who want to be marketed to, delivering anticipated, personal, and relevant messages to people who want to get them.
Delivering anticipated, relevant, and personal messages to people who want to get them. Date your customers, right? Date your customers. And the thing about dating your customers is you got to allow yourself to be patient, don't rush it, learn the customer, be enthused by the customer. That's a very important part. Like, genuinely fall in love with your customer, be enthused by the customer. It's a very important part of this whole conversation about dating your customer, right? Very important part. And then the last thing I want to share with you is you're going to have to learn to unlearn. You have to learn to unlearn. I think there are a lot of you in this conversation who know the world the way it was and have learned to work in the world the way you know it to be. But you are going to have to learn to unlearn. Unlearn the way you know things to be, unlearn the way you do things, unlearn the way you're thinking about things, unlearn the way you are interacting with your market, your customers, your competitors. You are going to have to unlearn, because if you can't unlearn, you will not find the upside in growth. So I want you to ask yourself this question. And here's the question. Just make a note of it for yourself if you can in your notepad. The question is this: what are the things that I know to be true that are no longer true? Sounds very cryptic, right? It's a very powerful question. What are the things that I know to be true that are no longer true? I'm going to give you a good example. Things that I know to be true that are no longer true is that unemployed Black women living in townships above the age of 35 don't really worry about the quality of a product when they're buying it. They worry more about the quantity of their product when they're buying it. Remember when we were told they would buy more of a particular soap than a different soap because that soap came with more quantity? We know today that that's not true, that actually customers who are most obsessed, the customers most obsessed with quality are the customers with the least amount of disposable income. The customers most obsessed with quality are the customers with the least amount of disposable income. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense, because for those customers, they have the least amount of money to waste. Every rand that they spend has to go the farthest, right? Every rand that they spend has to travel the longest distance. It has to keep them in play and in business for the longest amount of time, right? Has to keep them in play for the longest amount of time. So I'm almost done, but I did want to share this with you now. Let's end very quickly by just talking about why we've been disrupted by the period that we're in. We've been disrupted because three things have happened. You can only disrupt in an environment where there are three things that happen. There has to be free sharing, there has to be voluntary collaboration, and there has to be an environment of trust. And one of the things lockdown did and COVID did is it forced us into a space where we had to share information with each other. We had to collaborate with each other. Otherwise, you couldn't work because you couldn't go anywhere. And by inference, it meant you had to trust the person on the other side of the Zoom call, the Teams meeting. You just had to trust the other person. And so I'm suggesting to you that these three things are going to continue to be relevant in our lives and in our businesses. The question for you and I is, what are we going to do about it, right? And whether or not you and I will continue to understand the importance of those three things. So ask yourself if you're leveraging sharing, collaboration, and trust as you build your business. The next thing to ask yourself, anytime you're looking at information, guys, anytime you're dealing with news, is to ask yourself the question, is this hindsight, is it insight, or is it foresight? See, hindsight is what we know happened. Insight is what does it mean? Foresight is what does it tell me? What should I do? And I'm going to suggest to you that too many of you are spending your time in hindsight conversations and in insight meetings. Hindsight conversations. Ushiri ran away. Zuma doesn't want to testify at the Zondo Commission. I could keep going, right? Anytime you hear the media say breaking news, that's hindsight. They're telling you what happened. Insight is how many customers are buying, what are they buying, when are they buying it? 6 months' time, what will my customers buy? What will they want? How will they want it? How do I ready myself now for what's going to happen in 6 months' time? Foresight. So constantly question what you are seeing. Don't take it for granted. And then finally, and then I'm done. You have to learn that you must seek to be disappointed by your heroes. All of us in this conversation have heroes. These are people that we look up to who have done amazing and incredible things, and they're heroes of ours. But they're going to disappoint us. And the reason heroes disappoint us, one, is because they're human, and two, because they were heroes in a particular context. To prove the point, have a quick look at this video.
People who've been in the rocketry business for decades, who say about you that you don't know what you don't know.
Well, I suppose that's true of anyone. How can anyone know what they don't know?
But when critics say you can't do this, your answer to them is,
we've done it.
He's done it in partnership with NASA, which has given SpaceX technical advice and a contract worth up to $1.6 billion, mostly for 12 cargo flights to the space station. But SpaceX's lack of experience bothers some NASA legends like Apollo astronauts Neil Armstrong and Gene Cernan. They've testified to Congress that the Obama administration's drive to commercialize space could compromise safety and eventually cost the taxpayers.
Now is the time to overrule this administration's pledge to mediocrity.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it. And I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine. So it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
So they're hoping they would.
So you just watched Elon Musk, the world's Iron Man, a little boy who grows up in Pretoria, leaves South Africa for the United States, arrives in the US, starts a couple of startups, is in varsity, drops out of varsity, starts a couple of startups with marginal success. Then he and a friend of his called Max Levchin came up with what's called a Web 2.0 HTML-driven payment platform that they built called X.com. They built this incredible business called X.com, and across the road in Palo Alto, there are a couple of other guys, Reid Hoffman and a couple of other guys, Mark Andreessen, who are building another business called PayPal. And they decide that they're going to merge X.com and PayPal, but that the name PayPal actually sounds better. So they merge X.com with PayPal, becomes one entity, and Elon Musk becomes the CEO and Max his COO. They build PayPal and they sell it for billions of dollars. Then Elon Musk decides that he's not done. By the way, guys, when you make that kind of money, it's the kind of money that most of us in this room, myself included, would be like, as in I'm going to the beach. He decides that he's not done. He wants to do more. And so more he does. He buys into a couple of other startups. One or two of them fail, but he also buys into like this very strange electric car business called Tesla, which at the time had one product, the Tesla Roadster. Today we talk about the wonder that is Tesla, the massive growth in market valuation. But actually, we forget that when Elon Musk bought into Tesla, the two founders had one car. It was a Roadster. It wasn't a particularly great looking car, right? And the technology wasn't what it is today. So we often adjudicate the success of Tesla today and say, of course, he succeeded, but we forget the time he bought into it at. Years later, he gets into space with SpaceX, making space travel more affordable, the video you just watched now. Then the Hyperloop, then Neuralink. The list goes on and on and on. But you just watch that man have his own heroes tear him apart on national TV. And so I'm saying this to make this point, that if you really want to push the boundaries of what's possible and take your business to the next frontier, you can only do it if you are willing to be disappointed by your heroes. Don't take for granted that the people who've done things that you find remarkable are going to be remarkable forever. Everybody reaches a plateau. And those people get to a point where they themselves stop growing and stop developing and stop morphing and changing. And sometimes you grow past them. I've had that happen in my life so many times, where I grow past a person who used to be a hero of mine. And I've had to learn that it's okay to grow past your heroes. Right. Okay, Sam, I'm going to hand over back to you, and maybe we can facilitate a Q&A. So, Sam, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I always wanted to say this, Sam, back to studio.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Vusi, for joining us. And thank you very much for the content you've shared. Very relevant. And I must say that it's kind of like, it kind of look as if you and Lebo Lion, the facilitator for yesterday's masterclass, had a conversation there. You said, these are the things we're going to talk about, meaning some of the points that you emphasized when it comes to business model pivoting, they speak, into the masterclass that Lebo did yesterday. Thank you very much. One of them is customer for SMMEs to be customer centric.
Yes.
And second to that is she also used the language you used earlier, psychographic segmentation, because in the process of doing market research, she mentioned that SMMEs must make sure that they do that in order to be able to understand their customers very well. Now, Vusi, a lot of SMMEs, they use the LSM as a way of as a way as a way of customer discovery and all of that. Please quickly share with us why. Okay, let me ask the question this way: should SMMEs in the process of customer discovery discard LSM concepts and just focus on psychographic segmentation?
Yeah, but remember that. So that's a great question, Sam. Guys,
thank you very much.
This is about, you know how you arrive at the truth. You interrogate the same piece of evidence from different perspectives and lenses. And at the end of the day, what you're looking for when you're looking for insights and information about your customers is the truth. Somebody says, what is SLM? It's Caleb, it's LSM. It's a living standard measure, right? But so LSM is one of the ways to look at it. The other thing you want to look at is your NPS, your Net Promoter Score. So you want to look at what LSM should I be selling into? Then you want to look at within that LSM, what's my Net Promoter Score? Then you want to look at what's the anthropological, psychological basis, this thing called psychographic for each of these people. And you take all of them together. It's not either or. It really is about blending the knowledge that you have. You also want to overlay that with information, for instance, from Stats SA, which will give you great statistical inferences, great statistical data that you can use to pull apart where your real customers are. But I do want to make the point, and this is very, very quickly. I want to make this point. All analysis is exactly that. It's analysis. And it's analysis so that you can arrive at a hypothesis about the market you want to get into, right? Or the customer you want to sell to. It's completely plausible that you will do fantastic analysis and get your hypothesis wrong, right? So the reason when we talk about business model pivoting, and we often talk about test your business model, test your business case. If you think that customers really want this pen with the stylus at the back, and you've got to make 100 of these and sell them. And then you've got to listen to your customers tell you if it works or not, if the price works or not, if the distribution works or not. If you've actually got to test it. Analysis alone is not enough, right? You analyze, it's important, but once you've analyzed, you've then got to make sure that you're testing. And so the way to arrive at a winning business model, right, is through constant analyses, constant testing and iteration. And I always say to people, business models are discovered. Right? You discover a business model. You can't invent it. So you try one thing and something works and something else doesn't work. Then you change the thing that doesn't work and you substitute with something else. And before you know it, you eventually arrive at a business model like, oh, so this is how this thing works. But I think a lot of us, and if I'm going to be critical in this room, is I think a lot of us are not patient. You're in a rush. Take your time. You know, guys, I'm busy with a capital raising process. We're raising a 2 billion Rand mess fund. It's a lot of work. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. Working for nights, no sleep, no nothing. For dollar money. Zero, no money, no check, no invoice, no fuck all. It's an 18-month process. You're not going to raise that. It's an 18-month process. Now we'll probably reach first close at 400 million by June next year. But it's an 18-month process. That's how long it takes. So I'm not saying something to you that I'm not doing. Take your time and allow the business model to teach you. The trick is this. Once you have discovered that business model, then you have to move very rapidly with the business model. You've got to be very, very fast in how quickly you deploy and scale that business model.
Thank you so much, Vusi. By the way, we are joined by the Polokwane municipality in Limpopo. They have 50 SMMEs gathered in their hall, observing all the lockdown and the social distancing and all of that, all the health protocol, COVID-19 health protocol. I, to the delegates and the participants in Polokwane. Having said that, you made a reference to how entrepreneurs should look beyond their local community because the way of doing business and delivering product and value to the marketplace has changed. Not that it's changing, it has evidently changed. And talk about SMME digitalizing some of their business processes, whereby they are able to deliver value beyond their local communities. Because you said it, you as a small business, you are no longer competing with the businesses around you. You are competing with businesses provincially, nationally, continentally. Sometimes you can buy something here in Africa and in South Africa and deliver it anywhere in Africa or anywhere in the whole world. Just in a quick response, Vusi, what are the things small businesses in South Africa specifically should look at, or maybe tools that you can recommend that they can use to deliver products and services beyond their local community? If you're in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Polokwane, it doesn't matter. Deliver nationally. How should they look into other markets in Africa and even beyond Africa? I mean, you mentioned it, and Lebo also, permit me to also make reference to Lebo. She mentioned it yesterday that we are 50-something to 60 million. Our population in South Africa is 50-something to 60 million, but there is 1-something billion of us in Africa. So we are not maximizing the potential that the continent offers. So please, some of the things that SMMEs could do. Thank you very much, Vusi. And after Vusi responds, please, Marang, you can take over.
Well, let me just say this. This is not a challenge, by the way, guys, that I'm foreign to. Let me give you a sense. My first book. I just want you guys to understand how I'm going to use this word because I'm lacking a better one now. I'm going to help you understand how retarded the African problem is. In 2017, I launched my book, The Magna Carta of Exponentiality. I launched it in Barcelona. I sold 6,100 copies in a single day. Since then, I think we've sold over, I speak under correction, but I think we've sold over 50,000 copies in Europe. I only have one distributor in Europe, and the distributor is based in London. Okay? Here in Africa, in our Africa, all of us here. Okay? Yesterday, I get a young person in Tanzania saying, hey, I'm on your website trying to buy your book, but it won't allow me because your delivery agent doesn't deliver in Tanzania. These are the problems we're dealing with, like real fulfillment problems. I want to sell my hand sanitizer in Nigiri. I want to sell it in Guinea-Conakry. How do I get the customer there to buy it? It's a real problem. So I'm busy now working on how to fix the problem. I think one of the ways to do it is you've got to find local partners, right? So for instance, in East Africa, we partner with Nuria, which is an online bookstore, by the way, and they sell my books on that platform, right? So you have to find a way to partner with local people. You are not going to fix the problem yourself. So one of the things you've got to understand is in the value chain, where are you? I just want to make the point very quickly that for e-commerce businesses, transacting is not fulfillment. Fulfillment is not transacting. If you go on Take-A-Lot and you buy something using your credit card, that's called transacting. When Take-A-Lot delivers it to you in your house, that's fulfillment. So what Take-A-Lot has done is they've built a value chain that takes you from transacting, in fact, pre-transacting actually, from interest, but let's assume from transacting to fulfillment. And one of the things we have to do as entrepreneurs operating in the continent is to talk about where are we present. So find fulfillment partners is the point I'm making. We had to send about 100 copies of my books to Botswana. We have a fulfillment partner in Botswana. They're dealing with that. We're busy building a fund of funds for Africa with our partners in Namibia. I have partners in Namibia. So we're working on that together. So the point I'm making here, quite simply, is this. Find a way to have fulfillment partners that help you reach your customers. Don't try to do everything yourself, right? So sometimes you just get good at manufacturing, or get good at pricing, or get good at iteration. Just get good at one thing and then find people to help you with the other parts of the business. Mara?
That is quite insightful. And I enjoyed the fact that you're asking people to look beyond their own problems in their own offices. Because sometimes I think we get so engulfed in our problems that we're failing to see the outside world and see the possible solutions for that. So thank you very much for that session. Caleb, you've got your hand raised, my good sir. Let's pass over to you. What is your first question?
Just give me a minute. Just want to go through these notes of mine. But some of the questions were answered by the question that was asked by, what's his name? Yes, Sam. Yes, correct. But in my case, as small as I am, operating in Limpopo, Lephalale, and trying to get big, trying to get good, and all that sort. The question comes to this part where Vusi was talking about when you start your business, you need sharing, collab, and trust. Sharing on my side, it's quite hard. It's quite hard, and collabing, especially when you are in a place such as this. How does one get to trust the people that he's actually working with, if I may ask? Yes,
Caleb, wait. Your question presupposes that trust is a replacement for risk. It's not.
It's not.
So it doesn't. Oh, yes. You know what it's like, Caleb? It's like you meet a girl and you start dating, right?
Okay. Yes.
Have you got a girlfriend?
I got a wife.
Oh, well, even how many wives do you have, Caleb? Must just be clear.
So far it's one. I'm trying to get the second one.
Only one. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna make a joke. There's this guy, I'm sure you guys have seen him. I love his page. There's this guy on social media that gives like relationship advice. Have you seen him? Okay. And every time people ask him a question, he says, look, do you have money? Do you have money? Anyway, Caleb, I wanted to ask you this, right? So in your relationship with your wife, you trust her, right?
Yes, I do. I do trust her.
But it doesn't mean that there isn't a risk that things could go wrong. It just means that even in the presence of that risk, you elect to trust your wife. Developing relationships with business partners is a very similar concept. You have to elect to trust the person first.
Okay.
It's not that they have to prove themselves trustworthy, then you trust them. It's that you have to trust them until they prove themselves untrustworthy. Now, I'm making this point because you can't build a business without taking risk. It's impossible.
That is correct.
And you're not going to get it right all the time. Guys, I've been burnt by business partners. I've been burnt by suppliers. I've been burnt. Millions of hands. If I told you the figures in this room, you'd all leave and go cry, right? Millions. But today, when I deal with people, I still have to learn to trust them, even though I know that I've experienced a hurt before, right? So what I'm saying to you is this. You just have to bring the trust to the conversation, man. Like, there's no school for trust. There's no curriculum. There's no course you can do where they teach you how to trust 101. You just trust. And the first person, you're probably going to get it wrong. The second person, you'll get it wrong. But what happens over time is you get better at it. It's like swimming. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get.
Okay. I get you.
Kamogelo?
Sure. Thanks, Marang. Vusi, thank you so much for the valuable information that you've just said. You've touched on something very important in your delivery, which speaks to being able to translate your value into other markets that you initially did not sort of like tailor your product onto. And I mean, maybe that can also speak to Caleb's question that when you're operating in a specific domain, you solution for that. But now, how do you make sure that you translate your value and make it so economical that it can exist in another sort of like ecosystem, and then you translate it into creating partnerships with local partners?
So ask me that question in English.
Okay, sorry for speaking Setswana, Abuti. So in English, how do you package your value in such a way that it is not only for a small scale? Okay, so maybe if I ask it in this way, how do you move from a small scale sort of audience and package it in a way where it can translate into other markets?
Are you selling a service or a product?
I'm selling a product. So I sell wines called stained wines. And the initial value system is about creating an experience versus the wine itself. Yes, we create premium wines, but we then speak of the experience of how you relate to the product, what it speaks to your essence, and you exuding a sense of excellence in this space. And it was predominantly for Black people because you realize in the wine space that it was created for white people and the storyline behind it is for white people, right? But now creating a value system that speaks to us specifically tapping into that market and exuding a sense of excellence. Now, my primary sort of like thought process around this is that I want to venture now into export markets, right? Then how do you then sort of like pitch or position your value proposition such that it can exist past the Black market that we're initially solutioning for?
Right. Kamukelo, are you not the one who supplied Bongane in my state?
Bongane who?
Did you? Okay, then it's not you. Anyway, it's fine. What I wanted to ask you. So I think the way you've kind of done it already is so. For everybody else in the conversation, the reason I asked if Kamukelo sells a product or a service is because the way you communicate product and services is very different, right? Services tend to be efficiency based. So if you're selling anybody a service, generally, what you're trying to remove is a hassle factor or some sort of friction. That's what the service offers. I'm going to do this for you because I know it's a hassle for you. Products need a different way to sell. And it sounds like, Kamukelo, you've done it already because you're talking about your brand communication strategy and that you used more telling a story about the brand as a way to communicate what that brand is about.
Sure.
So that being the case then, now your question is, but I will say I'm transitioning to a different market. How do I do it in the different market? Well, what you have to figure out is what are the pain points, or what in marketing and sales we call hot buttons. What are the hot buttons for the customers that you want to sell that product to? So first of all, to whom do you want to sell the product? And second, what are the hot buttons, the pain points, the issues for that customer that matter? And how can you frame your communication strategy to fit with the pain points of that customer base? For everybody else in the conversation, great marketing, guys, is not an inclusive exercise. It's an exclusive exercise. I'm going to say it again. Great marketing is an exclusive exercise. It's not an inclusive exercise. When you're really effective at your marketing, one of the things your marketing does is it includes the people you want to, but it also very deliberately excludes the people you don't want to include. This is why, I'm a huge supercar fan, right? So over the past weekend, I was away on a supercar run with friends of mine. But all of the brands that were at that supercar run with my friends, you'll never see their ads on TV. They don't have TV ads. They don't have radio ads. They don't have internet ads. They don't have ads on Google. They don't have ads on Facebook. So how is it that all of us high net worth individuals, high power, high net worth, are all driving these supercars? They still market to us. but it's where they market to us and how they market to us. Does that make sense? They're not going to be running, I say this with the greatest of respect, they won't be running a promotions at a ShopRite. Askies, if you shop at ShopRite, is not a, ShopRite is cool. I buy at ShopRite myself. No, I'm just joking. But I think the point is made, right? So you want to think about who are the customers I want to target? Where are they? What's their psychographic, the demographic? Where do I find them? And then you really want to deep dive into what are the hot button issues that are pressing on them at the moment? And how can I unlock those to talk to those customers, right? So one of the things you'll begin to find is that in different markets, your brand communication strategy will be different, right? I don't know if you guys know, but a year ago, maybe a bit more, Ferrari sued Justin Bieber. I don't know if you're aware of that. And Ferrari sued Justin Bieber because Justin Bieber bought a 458 Apata, which is a very, very exclusive car. And he wasn't on the list to buy the car. So he bought it from a dealer that had bought the car. And then he took it and he put a pink wrap on it. Ferrari said, no, chief, can't take our car and put a pink wrap on it. And a huge fight ensued in court because Justin was like, well, actually, it's my car. And Ferrari said, no, actually, it's our brand. You just happen to be driving a component of it. And Ferrari won. So the point I'm making here is, why would Ferrari sue Justin Bieber? I remember many years ago saying that if I was Lamborghini, I would have sued Kanye Mbao. But, it's a different case. I like Kanye, by the way. I've got a huge amount of respect for Kanye. But when you are building a brand, you have to be very careful about who accesses that brand, when they access that brand, how they access that brand, how they utilize that brand on a daily basis, and you protect that. So your brand communication strategy then should be, who are the customers? Where are they? Where do I find them? How do I talk to them? And then you very deliberately go and talk to those people and no one else. It's the fewer is better approach.
So in a sense, working on creating that brand equity.
Absolutely critical. And for the people in the conversation, Kamogela's words are very important. She said brand equity. Kamogela, I don't know if you know why the word equity is used in that construct of brand equity. So in finance and accounting, we often talk about assets is equal to owner's equity plus liabilities. The reason we talk about brand equity is because if you build the brand of a business, it actually contributes to the equity, the value in the business, right? So the thing, though, about building a brand, Kamogela, as I'm sure you know, is that this is the difference, by the way, for the people listening, between sales and marketing. Sales is short-term, target-based, transaction-driven. This month, this client, this quarter, this deal. Brand has to look through time. So brand is constantly in long-term thinking mode. So I constantly get approached, for instance, by brands who want to do stuff with me, and I turn it down. Guys, for ridiculous money. And you know how tough it is to turn money down in 2020? 2020! But why would I turn it down? I turn it down because I'm looking through the lens of my brand, not the lens of the sale. My sales guys are like, let's close this deal. We're going to hit our target for the quarter. But my brand brain says, if we do this now, it closes these doors for us in 3 years' time. And we need those doors because that's where we're going. Right? So very good. You understand the concept perfectly well. Brand equity. Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Kamogela. Those were very interesting questions that you posed there, and very relevant in the context of building brands. I think a lot of the times people undermine it, and you think just because you're seen on social media, that is building a brand, and you don't see that that is an activity that contributes to building the brand and not necessarily the whole thing. I'm going to give Andile a chance to pose a question.
Is when is it ready for a certain brand? Like, I'm in the business of selling perfumes. When do you...
Cannot
Please
hear you.
Please increase your volume, Andile. We can't hear you very well.
Okay, my question is, what approach should I take if I want to put my brand in retail?
So you want to put your brand out there, and it is a perfume brand, and you want to know, what should you do?
Yes, he wants to put his brand at the retail stores.
Okay. That has actually come up quite a few times, the question on putting stuff into retail. I think there's someone else who makes juices, if I'm not mistaken, that has asked a question about retail. So yeah, this is a burning issue clearly for some.
So there's a couple of issues to consider here, right? And let me tell you how experienced I am in this field. So I cut my teeth in wholesale and retail. I was a director at a wholesale retail company that at some point was the largest distributor of FMCG in the continent, actually. I used to sit in the dial line meetings with all of the suppliers. I understand how the industry works, okay? And as we speak, actually, I've just bought some equity in a food business that is busy listing with a lot of the major retailers, Pick and Pay, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand this problem well, very well. So first, if you supply food, there are accreditation processes you need to go through. No retailer is just going to stock your products. There's actual accreditation processes you've got to go through. So let's imagine that you've already been accredited. You've got I think it's the FSA and a couple of other accreditations you've got to go through. They've come to your factory, they've visited your factory, they check out that you've got the necessary standards, the food safety standards, blah, blah, blah. Let's imagine all of that is done, which is a costly exercise in the region of millions. But let's imagine it's all done. Let's also imagine that you've already put in an ISO accredited process, your ISO 2000, 9000, whatever it is, and that's a couple of $100,000. So let's imagine all of that is done. All of that is done before you earn R1. So your question, Andile, is how do I get my stuff in retail? Chief. First, you have to decide for yourself who your target market is and which retailer they buy from. Second, I'm going to break news to you that you guys will not like. Retailers don't exist for you to do well in business. Retailers are not there for you. They're there for themselves. Retailers are a distribution chain. So when you're supplying a retailer, you're going to need 90 days worth of stock in inventory. 90 days. So imagine you sell R1 million worth of stock every 30 days. You need to have 3 million rand worth of stock up front for the retailer. And the reason it's 90 days is because you will supply them with the first 30 days, send them an invoice at the end of the first 30 days, they won't pay you. They'll pay you after 2 months. Then on the next 30 days, you supply them with a second one and you send them that invoice, they'll pay you 2 months after that. Then on the third one, you'll supply them again with another R1 million worth of stock and they'll pay you 2 months after that. So for the first month's orders, you're only going to get paid at the end of month 3, right? So you need 90 days worth of working capital in stock to supply upfront. But let's imagine you have that. Then you go and see the buyer at a retail chain. Guys, I don't know if you're aware of this, but retailers make more money with private label than they do selling your product. So when you go to a ShopRite, they've now got ShopRite private label. You go to a Pick and Pay, got Pick and Pay private label. You want to know why Woolworths Food makes more money than any other food business? Because the largest portion of basket of goods sold at Woolworths Food is Woolworths products. It's private label. So when you go to the retailer and say you want to sell him your hand sanitizer, the first thing he's trying to figure out is, can I do this hand sanitizer myself? Because if I can, I don't need you. I can make it myself and sell it myself and earn a higher portion of the margin. But let's imagine you've got all of the FSA approvals done. Then let's imagine you've got all of the retail approvals done. And let's imagine you've got the 90-day stock up front. The retailer will only meet with you if customers are asking for your product at the retail store. So what most of us think is, if I can get my product into retail, customers will buy. It's actually the inverse. You've got to get customers to buy before retailers want to stock your product. Some best advice I can give you, Andy, if I were you, is I would do what I call a herbal life. Okay? I would find independent distributors to sell my perfume. I would get customers into the habit of buying my perfume. I'd build a book of customers who buy my perfume, and I would do that for 2 years. And after 2 years of me having customers buy my perfume, Then after they use it, they buy it again. After they use it, they buy it again. They tell me what smell they like, what scent they like, what flavor they like. I begin to understand what price point they like it at, all of that stuff, using my own distribution chain of my own independent agents. Then I would go to the retailer and I'd say, Mr. Retailer, I have this many customers who buy my product. You are based in Libuahomu. All my customers are based around Libuahomu. I want to supply you with my product, and then I'll redirect my customers to come to you. Do you know why the retailer then says yes? Because the retailer knows that when the customers come to him to buy your perfume, they're not just going to buy perfume. When you go to a retail store, you buy a basket of goods. So now he gets to sell them all the other things that he wants to sell. That's why when you go to a Clicks, Pick and Pay, Dischem, any of those stores, there's that long aisle with chocolates around it. That's just because they want to make sure you buy chocolates before you leave. You don't need chocolates, but that's why they have them there, right? It's a discretionary purchase. So what I'm saying, Andile, is that getting into the retail chain is hugely risky, hugely capital intensive, and an easy way to say, email this person and they'll get you in. It doesn't work that way.
It's this is what you're saying now reminds me of a story that Jabu Stone told me some years ago. And he said when he launched his hair care product and he was trying to get it into the retail stores and they wouldn't accept it. So this is like late 80s, early 90s when this was happening. And he would give money to his friends. So he'd negotiate first with the store to say, look, can you just allow me to have 10 of my hair care products into your store? And if for a while people are not asking for this product, then I will happily come and remove this after a 2-week period. And in that time, he then went back to his friends, had a conversation with them, gave them $100 each and said to them, go to this particular store and buy my product. And then he sent the rest of them to go in there to ask for the product, knowing that the consignment that he'd left there of 10 units had actually run out. So then the shopkeeper found out, was getting annoyed with people asking for a product that they didn't have enough stock of. But each time the friends would buy, they would return whatever they bought to him, and he'd go back and he'd say, hey, how did my product go? And then the shopkeeper would really say, you know what, it ran out so quickly, I just don't know. I need more than 10 units. And that's pretty much how he gained a footprint into the retail store. And he went from one shop to the next shop to the next shop in his community, trying to get them to put in his products. And for me, that story always tells me how much we undermine our local communities. We want to get into retail. We go look at the Spars of the world or whatever else. We're not creating these community or these consumers and customers within our local neighborhoods, right? So if you did that kind of concept, and we can argue the ethics behind it afterwards, but if you did that with your local spaza shop or somebody that has got a shop and is running a shop like that, then it's easier for you to get into that retail, because by the time you get to a Spar or a Pick and Pay or a Woolworths, you're then saying, look, there are 10 or 15 spaza shops in my neighborhood that are keeping it, and these are the volumes. This shop also keeps it, and these are the volumes. And then you can go in there with evidence that you actually have customers that are looking for this particular product. So Smooth Life Africa and Shandukani, if you can keep your questions very concise and very brief, then we can get going. So Smooth Life, please go ahead.
Hi, Vusi. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Seeing that you spent a lot of energy like sharing your knowledge with us this morning. I'm from Smooth Life. My name is Katu. I make vegetable smoothies. Seeing that you spent a lot of energy, I'd love to supply you with my products so that you can taste them and have them for breakfast. So we can arrange with 67 CEO. Then I just want to get my products to you. Then you can try it and you tell me how you like them, or if you do like them.
Oh, good. I'm sure Sam will connect us.
Thank you.
Javich, there you go, Sam. Talk about getting into the shelf. You're getting it straight to a consumer. Shandukani.
Sorry, Marang, and it just did that. It just did that virtually, and which also Andile and all the SMMEs that are here that are products to get to market also look at online marketplaces. Look at online marketplaces where you can, your example of Take a Lot and all the online marketplaces. Look at that also. And Facebook also have a free marketplace. So look at those. You can use those platforms to generate traction and then take the data or the traction to the physical retail stores to say people are truly buying our product. Thank you, Marang.
Awesome. And those of you that are actually manufacturing locally, so if you're manufacturing in South Africa, you can contact Proudly SA, become a member there, and they can help you get onto their online store, which is rsamade.co.za, and you can sell your products. So they only focus on locally manufactured products, and that's what they punt. So last person, Shandukani.
My question is, how can we as a company upscale our service using digital marketing to attract clients? And also, how can we strategize in building a consistent service towards our client in the private and public sector?
So the first question is, how do I attract my customers using digital? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
What's the second one?
It's how can we as a company strategize in building a consistent service towards our clients in the private and also public sector in South Africa.
Building a sales pipeline is about going where your customers are at the time when they can listen to you, grabbing their attention and telling them what you want them to hear. That's the basics of building a sales pipeline. So go where your customers are at the time when they're willing to listen to you, get their attention, and tell them what you want them to know. And that fundamental foundation is the same regardless of the business that you're in. The trick, though, is that when you, as I imagine you do, if you're in construction, then there are several other things to consider. I used to be a shareholder in a construction business. I'm hoping you guys get the sense that I've been around. I used to be a shareholder in a construction business. In fact, I was a shareholder in two. The one construction business was listed. We used to do affordable housing. The other one was a public sector construction business, and we had a CIDB grading of 8, right? Which, as people in this conversation would know, if you're in construction, that's a high number. So we used to do massive projects. But you have to recognize that if I'm running a public sector, a construction for public sector business, why do I need to be on digital? Digital what? Now, it's not, I want to be clear, it's not to say you can't digitalize your business processes to be efficient. Of course you can. You can put your people in Microsoft 365. You can use SharePoint to keep documentation and share information. You can put everybody on Microsoft Teams for collaboration and communication. There's a million things. You can run an online project management software to help you understand what project is pending, where, what stage you're at, et cetera, et cetera. There's a million things you can do in terms of digitalizing business processes. But you are in construction, which means you take bricks, you put them on top of each other with a bit of concrete and cement in the middle. That's a physical manifestation business. So one of the things we have to do is not to make more sexy and complex, very simple things. So the question for you is this: who are your potential customers, or who are the customers you want? Where are they? Who are they buying from now? Why are they buying from that person? And what are you going to offer that's different so that they would make the decision to buy from you? It's a very simple basic. It has nothing to do with digital. I don't think, I mean, for a company like yours, I just think a decent, well-run, well-built website is good enough, actually. The rest will take care of itself. What you should be doing is spending time sitting in front of customers in one-on-one meetings and understanding from them what are the next construction projects that are going up, which construction projects are going to be put up by which department, where, at which point, what's the budget, get the tender documentation in place. That stuff that's the stuff you need to be doing. Don't worry about websites and digital, and you're going to confuse yourself and barrow down a direction you don't want to be barrowing down. But if you want to be selling to the consumer and you want to be building, I imagine homes or something like that for the consumer market, then you also want to talk to a captive market. And the captive market there you want to talk to is architects and project managers. Now notice, yours is a great example of a simple business that can be hugely lucrative, but is not driven by, I always say to people, guys, the best businesses that make the most money, they are not Instagrammable. You can't Instagram it. Like businesses that make money, stupid money, you can't Instagram. They're not sexy. They're not Instagram, like, oh my God, look at me, I'm on makeup, oh my God. You can't do that with like guys that, if your business makes money, you can't Instagram it. It's not sexy, right? Generally, sexy businesses, million followers plus on Instagram, that it doesn't make money. It doesn't go beyond the personality driving it, right? So for a business like yours, it's just go back to the simple basics. Who are the customers? Where are they? What are they buying? If you want to talk to the captive market. If you want to unlock projects, talk to the project managers and talk to architects. They'll tell you what's coming up, who's doing what their budget is, that's how you do what you do. Your business, my brother, is offline. It's not online. Now, you can have digital to make your business more efficient, but you're running an offline business, not an online business.
Okay, thank you for the advice.
Awesome. So unfortunately, we've run out of time for today's session. I have enjoyed the engagement that you have come through. It is clearly telling that we're adding on from what we've learned yesterday, and our minds are really opening up to newer possibilities. And like Lebo said yesterday, think differently. And today, if there's anything that you will take away from, or at least I'm taking away from Vusi's conversation, is the importance of actually understanding your customer in order to get your product or service to the customer. We can never emphasize that enough. Otherwise, you just really are so disconnected to your customer. Are you even solving the right problem for that customer if you're not knowing enough about that particular individuals or those individuals? Vusi, thank you so much for your time, and especially for staying longer than scheduled. Tomorrow, we are having a fireside chat with Hlubi Arnold Mboya. You guys know her, probably most of you know her as an actress, but she is somebody who is building businesses within the film and television industry. She will be coming through to talk about not just her entrepreneurial journey, but the importance of building a personal brand and how that affects the way she is doing business. I think for me, this is quite an important thing, especially when you're moving out from being that one-man identity and you're starting to grow a team and you're starting to grow a business. How do you then, manage the two, your personal brand, the business brand, and what does it all look like? And it can be quite confusing. So tomorrow we have somebody that's quite good at it, and Hlubi will be coming through for a fireside chat with Sam tomorrow. So please do join us promptly tomorrow at 9:00 for this session.
Thank you, everybody.
Sam, I've got nothing else from my side, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marang. Thank you very much, Vusi. And we're very grateful for all the content and the skills that you have transferred. We wish you well in your business. And for the entrepreneurs, let me start with those that are gathered in Polokwane physically. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Polokwane Municipality, for making that happen. And for the honorable delegates that are joining us virtually, thank you so much, guys. If you could, I'm just going to, relaunch, continue. I just want to quickly put the poll out there while I do the final or closing remark. Please, if you could quickly, just to have a sense of those that are still joining us and where you're joining us from, please, let's get to 100% on the poll. Thank you very much, guys. We are very grateful, and thank you for staying this far. So like Marang announced earlier, we're back here tomorrow with Hlubi. We're back here also on Thursday. If you want to know how to really sell both physically and digitally, sales, or how to get more customers is what we're going to look at on Thursday. And on Friday, we'll get some testimonials of some of the entrepreneurs that have been part of 67 CEOs since inception. For example, the co-founder of Smooth Life that just made a potential sale with Vusi, his name is Katu. Smooth Life was the overall winner at the 67 CEOs Global Entrepreneurship Week 2019. And the company won 75,000 Rand last year. And on Friday, you are going to hear how they have spent the money to be able to get their business even going, being sustainable, as it were. So once again, thank you very much. For entrepreneurs in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga, get ready to start pitching your businesses from tomorrow. After my conversation with Luby, she's going to also assist you on how to position yourself or posture yourself when it comes to video pitching and your voice. I've put a link to 67 CEOs YouTube channel on the chat. Guys, subscribe to the channel. The masterclass of yesterday with Lebo will be there shortly. And the presentation, the Vusi's presentation also will put it on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, guys. And at this point, you can switch on your video just to say goodbye and wave to everyone.